understanding of the HIV epidemic. We'll also explore the ongoing importance of centering the lived experiences and community voice in the work ahead. So, through truth telling, reflection, and bold vision, this panel is an invitation to honor our past, recognize our collective impact, and imagine what's possible when our voices lead the way. So let's buckle up. We're gonna lean forward into truth. Thank you, Nathan. And lived experience and the brilliance that has always come from our community. So as a starter, I want to ask my panelists here, may I challenge you to summarize your beautifully dynamic narratives within the 2-minute offering to give our audience a peek preview of who you are. I know it's complicated.
No, that's quite all right. Hi, everybody. My name is Nathaniel Holly. I am the founder and CEO of Relapse Project. I'm also a person that's been living with HIV for 14 years, which is why I started my nonprofit to enhance representation about what how to live and look like and how to build a continuum of care for yourself that was optimal. Yeah, so that was a lot less than 2 minutes, but I'm sure we'll get into more. But
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely will get into more.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, will you win this? Thank you. And we move on to
Hi, my name is Helen.
Oh, hell, you have fans.
I didn't know I had a fan, but thank you. My name is Helen Simba, and I am an advocate, and I see myself as an activist, and I'm also sometimes disruptor when it needs to be. I've been doing HIV work for, I'm going to give out my age, almost 35 years, but I started when I'm born. I do everything, and I also sit on the board with the Affairs Center and the AIDS Walk South Dallas, and I'm also part of the HIV caucus, so that gives me a chance to voice myself, to talk about HIV, and with my own lived experience, I feel like I got a platform to be able to change myself on how I live and how other people live. So I'm just so excited to be here. And that was just a short version.
My name is Donna, part of Texas Black Women. Why did I Texas Black Women? I've been public for 18 years, and basically my life, I'm advocate advocacy. I do voter engagement because a lot of things we do, we have to vote on it. The laws is passed. If we don't, we're gonna be stuck like we are. And if we want to make changes, you gotta vote. So voting is my passion. HIV, I'm an advocate. I get out there. I want to be able to go to schools. It's my mission to little girls, to let them know that it's okay. If I had somebody to talk to when I was younger, maybe this wouldn't have happened. But I want to make sure I can get into the schools and just let everybody know that it's okay. And this is, people say I'm crazy, but I'm gonna say this now. I always say HIV is the best thing that ever happened to me. And they say, what? Why you say that? Because it's made me the woman that I am today.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I am Noonday. My friends follow me everywhere. I love y'all, man. I really love you. I love you guys. A lot of people in the streets know me as Nunu. That has always been my nickname. My mom gave me that nickname. Well, my big brother gave me that nickname because I was the new baby in the house, and he, in his 2-year-old mind, said new. So I've been the new baby. So, and I'm basically still new here at Abounding Prosperity, but just officially working with Abounding Prosperity. I was at the forefront with Kurt Myers when he first started Abounding Prosperity, and during that time, it changed my life. It let me know that something was bigger. And I also want to thank Tamara for realizing that I was hired. True enough, because of my in the street effect, hireable. Right, and so now that I am, I'm also on the podcast with my manager, and we run a podcast. It's a wonderful podcast. You guys should listen in on it. We raise We cover some great topics, aging with HIV, and I am also, I have HIV. I've been living with HIV for about 34 years. Y'all probably thought I was 30, right? Yes, but anyway, that's who I am. Today, I just want to cover some great topics. I want to let you guys in on my truth. I want to let you guys in on what my legacy has become and what I want it to be.
Thank you very much. All right, and so that was a beautiful sneak peek into our narrative. What I heard here, actually, I feel like I was trying to do the math, but I failed. But I definitely heard more than a century, a century of lived experience with HIV. And so I'm excited to hear what knowledge that we'll be able to offer to each other and those who will be able to listen to us today. I want to start with this question. And whomever is free, whomever wishes to can jump in and answer it. So how have you seen society's perception of HIV and those living with HIV evolve over the decades? Like, is it better or worse? What has been your perception?
I think, I'm gonna say that, I'm gonna start with that one. Well, it's kind of like it has evolved in a lot of good ways. Of course, you know, as far as stigmas, and we talked about this on our podcast, we came up with a podcast titled Stomp the Stigma, because I watched in the 90s, the early 90s, guys my age that were 18, 19, 20, 20 up to 30 years old, just absolutely died before my eyes, and it was all because of stigma. And that changed in a lot part of, you know, the continuance of HIV, and we've conquered a lot, we've gone through a lot as far as the medication, as far as community, because there was no AP when I was first diagnosed, you know. I was diagnosed at a job corps near San Antonio, Texas, and the aloneness that I felt, it was just incredible. But I always knew that, like I said also on the podcast, that I was not going to be a fatality. I was not going to lay my life down. And how I think that it has changed is that people like me are living boldly. Now we have segments like this. We're saying that we are alive, we will continue to live, and that has changed other people's ideas. Because, you know, when someone knows that you're strong, they're not going to message you. And I think that the notion of HIV, some would say the spirit of HIV, sees that we are living, you know, that we're thriving and we're thriving, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
And that means surviving and thriving at the same time. So I think that it's viewed different because we are bolder and saying who we are and that we're here to live.
Thank you for that, Nde. I was sitting here, I was thinking about things like, well, thinking about stigma and how stigma has like informed not only how HIV has been perpetuated in our communities, but like how hard of a fight it is. And then also thinking about those like us who were in the forefront of it, creating the different principles, making sure that our voices were heard and we were being respected as individuals living with HIV, HIV being identified as like the gay plague and all those things. Like so many things have happened since then. So yeah, if one of you would be happy to share with the audience how you've seen society's perception change over the decades. I think I see Ms. Donna in preparation yet.
I am one of the people that was stigmatized, that I was stigmatizing people living with HIV because I didn't know, lack of education, lack of knowledge. I used to say, well, I had surgery before, right? Well, why would I have surgery gonna be skinny anyway? But when I found out then I had to educate myself.
Yeah.
And then once I educate myself, educate my family, and when I'm out somewhere and somebody's talking, right then, that's the moment that you educate when you start talking negative.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel, you had something to share as well?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, just specifically in the circles that I'm a part of, I can only really speak to that. It's changed Tremendously. I remember a time when people were extremely afraid to talk about their status. They were afraid to be out. They were afraid to date. They were afraid of how they were going to be viewed and all those different things. I mean, and I even knew those things when I was first diagnosed. So if I can even go through the 14, almost 15 years that I've been living with HIV, when I was first diagnosed, I promised I would never tell anybody. Actually, you know, like this is going to shift how everybody views me. And growing up and kind of being like that golden child of the family, I'm the youngest of my siblings, well, to me, my sister. And my mom, she favored me. And so that favor I took out into the world. And so once I felt like I no longer was going to have that favor, I didn't want to give that up. And so that's part of that stigma because I was uneducated and I didn't really realize that, oh, I can still have kids if I want to. Like if I stay on treatment, if I take care of myself, my life doesn't change and all these other things. But those were notions that I didn't even know when I was first diagnosed. But now we have people living boldly, living proudly, living out, and that representation shifts culture. And I think that's really what I have seen. I didn't know anybody who was living with HIV besides one person when I was first diagnosed. But now I have circles of people living with HIV that are around me. And if you go to my Instagram page, like the first thing that you see is that I'm HIV positive. So to build that representation and let other people know that, you know, it's okay to talk about it.
Wow. Wow, that was huge. That was huge. The perception of fear is something that I think all of us deal with to a large degree outside of just thinking about living with an HIV diagnosis. I was privy to hear a conversation earlier today in the symposium with Mother to Son, and I was thinking about like the art of just letting go. You know, letting go of the idea of like how people may think about you or feel about you because you decided to thrive, as we say on the A podcast at Abounding Prosperity. But Ms. Helen, I would love to hear your idea of society's perception on HIV, how it's changed over the decades.
Yes. So for me, it has changed a lot because having to start being an advocate earlier in the 90s, all we were talking about at that time is people dying. Because I remember I couldn't see myself in it. Because all I heard was HIV is a gay white man.
Yeah.
That's all it was. And here I was, I'm like, okay, I'm black. Hold on. So what's going on? So I did not fit in that category. And there was so much stigma at that time that nobody could even, address it. There was not even services that were geared to people like us. So I'm thankful for the people who were upfront to talk about HIV, to be where we are now, because somebody had to start it. That it was not black women, it was not, because it wasn't that many of us.
Yes.
So things have changed. When people came into the office, me as an advocate at that time, all we were speaking about is, so what you gonna do when you die? Or who's gonna take care of your children?
Yeah.
Who's going to bury you? So it was about talking about your death, what kind of death you want to do. But now it has changed. Instead of that, we're talking about living. We talk about we want to buy a house. We want to talk about we want to get married. We want to have babies. Those people are having babies, getting pregnant. So that has changed. And, in those days, we were taking 30, 40 pills.
Oh, yes, we were.
Because you couldn't even get a job that, I know I used to have a beeper. Every time it's like, boom, boom, people are like, what's going on? I gotta go take my medicine. So you couldn't even got a job. So you couldn't even, it was hard to even keep it because people are wondering, what is this that you are taking? So what has changed now is that one day you live. That has changed.
Yeah.
What has changed is that now people are understanding, the ones that want to understand, understanding that HIV is not a death sentence, that you can live with it every day. What has changed is that now you see people who are professionals, because at first people will look at you and say, oh yeah, she look like she got that thing. But now it's not, because it doesn't matter how it happened that you have HIV, we have all ended up having HIV. So it doesn't matter that somebody was doing the things that people say it was risky, and somebody was married, and somebody was doing nothing, but we still, all of us ended up HIV positive.
Yeah.
So that has changed. Thank you.
Wow, that was beautifully said, Ms. Helen. I must say, You hit on so many points that I really would like to expound on, but I have a script here. And I shall not defer. Yes, indeed. It was very important because I wanted to make sure that we hit on all the things and that we were able to curate a conversation that was meaningful and impactful. That was very important to me. But you made me think, Ms. Helen, and the rest of you as well, just how, again, impactful stigma has been on our lives, and how it just informs us and navigates us in ways that determines like our future, good, bad, or indifferent. And with that, of course, there are many things. I'm having many thoughts. I'm thinking about like just the sheer power of stigma, like the force of it is so strong, and yet and still you have individuals like us that like go against the grain and say, okay, there is a larger purpose for us. And so with that, my question is like, what does meaningful involvement of people living with HIV mean to you? And how has it changed? How has that changed over time? I mean, in the beginning, again, I talked about the Denver principles where we had individuals saying, okay, we need to come up with this list of things to offer to providers who are offering care to us to let them know how to care for us. We need to do this thing. But then what has changed? Like, what are some other things that we have seen with regard to the meaningful involvement of individuals like ourselves?
I would say that once we realized that we're going to die, we figured out what we wanted to live. And once we figured out what we wanted and what we needed to live, we started to communicate those things. Because, I'm not just now preparing my will and figuring out how I'm going to spend the rest of my life or enjoy the rest of my days, at that time I thought was numbered. But when I realized, like, no, I'm going to live to be as long as I choose to be.
Yeah.
And I need a system that supports that as well. And so if you're not, then we come together and as in solidarity and we say, like, no, don't treat me like I'm going to die in 2 weeks. Treat me like you're going to see me in 3 years because I'm going to give you a review and make sure that you don't have a practice otherwise. No, seriously. And so when people they are forced to value you, you force them to value you in your personhood and who you are and all of the beauty that you are, then no, I'm not that different from you. I want the same things that you want. I want a full life. I want a healthy life. I want love. I want lust. I want all those different things.
Yeah.
And this is how I want them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to advocate for myself. And I think that that's been the biggest thing that I've seen from the community, especially here in Dallas. Like the people that are living with HIV, they're not taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
And, we're not just going to accept the status quo. We're not just going to take the crumb that you want to give us. Like, no, we're going to set the pathway and tell you what we want and show you how to create it.
Yeah. I actually see that too here. It's starkly different than where I come from in Birmingham, Alabama. Did you have some to add to that, Helen?
Yeah, so I think that for me, we have demanded to sit at the table because now we don't want people making decisions for us. Because if you're going to look at the things that you think are good for me, we need to be there too, to be able to say, yes, it's going to be good for us. So I think that, meaningful involvement for us has been we sitting at the table, being able to say our opinion, being able to shape the way that we want to live. It's the same way you go to the doctor says take 2 pills, you're like, okay, but I can't take 2 pills, they're too big. But, because there's another option. So we are able to speak up. So yes, being at the table has been meaningful.
Yeah.
I think that how I view my personal involvement in advocacy and I think it's like always with me, there's an unofficial time where I was always an advocate, always, before I got this job, before I started doing official work with HIV, I always thought of myself, of my legacy as one that was always empowering people that were living with HIV, preventing HIV. So I think the ways that things have changed and the things that we're going through right now is what we're telling our doctors how to treat us I have always been doing that, you know, I've always said that, but all at the same time, I was the last of my friends to get one pill. I was on 3, 4 pills for a very long time, and my friends was like, and here I am, the advocate, and they're popping one pill, slanging hair in my face. I'm like, girl, how did you get one pill? It's like, and I had to find out that I was, well, my caregiver did not like, my doctor did not like me to say that I was receiving subpar. But, you know, they kept me on the pills that they wanted to keep me on. And I woke up to that after seeing my friends pop one pill, slaying hair in my face and going about their lives. And I'm like, I'm not taking this anymore. I want to be on one pill.
Yeah.
And I started demanding that, and that let me know, wait a minute, I'm gonna grab the reins throughout this entire process of me living with HIV. I'm gonna always say, wait a minute, no, doc, I need this. Do you have a new lotion for me? Or like, what's going on? Because I want the best care for myself, and I want the best care for my community. And that leads me to being here. It empowers me to work for Abandoned Prosperity because I get to see firsthand how the care is given, and we give super care to people. You know, working with Abandoned Prosperity, you see how much these people really care about
Yeah.
the clients and care about the people that come through there, especially the Black and brown community. We really stick our necks out. You know, with this funding cut thing, AP is still giving quality care, and that's important. It really is important. Last time I'm gonna plug my place, y'all, but you know, we got it going on as far as love and care. You know, it has to be personal. Your care has to be personal. I personally, throughout my HIV times before Abandoned Prosperity, had never went to see my doctor and they said, hey, we got a therapist upstairs. That just blew my mind with Abandoned Prosperity, that my therapist, I started to see a therapist, you know, right there, you know, and you know, you gotta take care of the mind and take care of the body, you know, so we had that both here at Abandoned Prosperity, so.
Yeah.
I think forging your way in your own care that plays a big part too. You gotta ask more to get more. Thank you.
Yeah, that is definitely true, Noon. I must say, what I'm also hearing you express is the importance of self-advocacy, and that is something that we had to. Well, let me use I statements here. That is something that I had to learn because it was dark for a long time before I saw light. And I think oftentimes when we do have conversations like this, where we're trying to inject light and love and peace, and just thinking a more positively, we negate to include the parts where we like struggled and maybe we even perpetuated that stigma through internal stigma, of course, that like our days are numbered. You know, we're counting in hours, like how much time do I have here? But over time, we do learn different and we express differently, and we know that there are better outcomes out there for us. So that is something definitely that I was thinking about. I was also thinking about this MIPA, and we talked about MIPA, meaningful involvement of people living with HIV, the A, if you hear the A is for AIDS, and then GPA, greater involvement of people living with HIV and AIDS. And so one thing that I do know, and I'm sure many of you do as well, is that many institutions speak highly of like the importance of MIPA and GPA. However, the implementation of a part of involving people with living with HIV and AIDS in this truly meaningful way is absent. And oftentimes there is tokenization that we experience as people living with HIV, offering our voice to the work. And we haven't talked about. So this is me going off script. This is why I'm like, I try not to do it, okay? Because that's like that's a heavy hitter. You know, I've experienced that quite often tokenization, like we need to hear your voice. It's important, it's powerful, impactful. It's gonna give us all the things to, to heal the world, because like that's definitely what we're trying to do here, right? And yet, and still we're silenced and, shut down, discarded. Okay, let's talk a little bit about that. Have we had any of those experiences that we want to express to the group, how to maybe uh, best navigate those types of conversations or experiences that we have?
When we were silenced, you mean?
And when we were silenced, should that be a podcast episode?
I was never silenced.
Okay.
Talk about it, Miss Donna.
You never?
Never?
Not really, no. I mean, not really, no.
Attempt to silence you? Maybe some attempts?
I pick my battles. I pick who are around me. And if they don't want to be around me, then that's, they don't have to deal with them.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have to deal with it. So, I mean,
Well, I was thinking about, let me see this.
yeah.
I'm thinking about things in society that try to silence you, because you know what?
Being a black.
This administration is attempting to silence us by underfunding us and taking funds. That's a way that they're trying to silence
They're
us.
trying to do more than just silence it. They're trying to eliminate it.
eliminate.
Right.
Eliminate community right now.
Things like that on the
Yeah,
outside.
yeah. They are eliminating.
I
No, they're
won't
trying
be
to.
silenced like that. I will not let them.
Be silenced. I'm here for
I will
that.
not let them silence
Right,
anymore.
right. Thank you so much.
I am a black woman living with HIV. There's not enough things out there for us. So I have to be about us. I got to get out there and make sure that no more little girls, no more women. I'm listening to you guys talk. You're like in your 20s when you got it. 20s. I was 47. Maybe one of them people that didn't think it could happen to them.
Yeah.
So I'm one of those older people that y'all think is not having sex, y'all mama, grandmama, stuff like that. We are. I'm 60.
Don't say it's true.
I just turned 60. I just turned 66 a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh, happy birthday to you.
Thank you. And I'm gonna still be doing it.
Off script.
She will not be silenced.
A lot of times, like, back in the day, or maybe even a few years ago, panels like this, they would have you come and, talk about your story and your status and how you became positive and all these other things. But when you had an opinion about how they ran services, or when you had an opinion about the lobby, or what Lord was working the reception desk, they didn't want to hear those things and said, like, no, we only want your story. We don't want your involvement in how we run our business. And that is the difference. Like, and that's that level of silence. And like, I only want you to speak to this part. No, we speak to the whole circle of how this care continuum looks, because all of this affects me, and I have an insight on all of it. And I think that that's been the biggest thing, is understanding, like, no, my story is not the most impactful thing that I have. Also, my purview and how I can affect change is part of what makes me so powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And you actually have me, Nathaniel, thinking about holistic care services as well, because often it's like just having us completely focus on our HIV diagnosis and like not all the other things that we now get to live to experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, nobody told me like the HIV would cause an increase in inflammation.
Yeah.
So like, there's certain things you can do in terms of like working out or drinking water or like exercise, like that journey, like my HIV care continuum did not just start with me taking a pill. Like, it started with me understanding, like, how am I going to live my life with this? How am I going to date? How am I going to go to church? How am I going to be with my family? How am I going to be? And not just taking a pill. So like, all those other things had to come into the purview. Therapy was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Outside of having my diagnosis, that got me the opportunity to put all of my stuff on the table and sort through all of the trauma that I probably would have never really addressed if I hadn't gotten my diagnosis, and it messed up my world. Like, that was the one thing I couldn't put under the carpet. So I had to pull back that carpet and look at everything else and sort it out. But that was where my journey of healing started. It didn't start when I was diagnosed, and I was on 3 pills a day too at first. I was like, child, this is crazy. But once I realized, like, there's a 1 pill a day regimen, it's like, no, this is what I want, but also these other things that I want, and I feel like I need, because at one point I thought I was losing my mind. Literally, I can tell you a story. So when I was first diagnosed in those first 2 years, when I was living, I guess, I don't know, stealth or underground or not telling anybody, that was the most stressful time in my life because I had to hide my pills and I had to make sure, you know, that nobody saw me take them. And then I was actually worried about people eating behind me or drinking behind me, or in terms of dating. Like I was very, very cautious of even disclosing with that. Like if I tell this person, they're gonna tell everybody. So you know, I don't even know if I can, you know, date like this. But and so that puts you into this box, and it's almost like a prison. And that prison I lived in for almost 2 years until one day I was at the grocery store and I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what I was doing there. I didn't know where I lived at. I literally hit a pocket of trauma where my mind was on out. And that's when I went to my doctor. I said, something's wrong with me. Like, I'm losing my mind or something. She's like, it sounds like you're just really overwhelmed with stress and you don't know how to process it.
Yeah.
So here's an organization that I think that would help you. And I went to the organization, it was right and white funded, and so they actually broke rules to get me therapy, but that is really what changed my life. I actually was able to talk to somebody about my status and able to talk through all of the things and the image issues and how I saw myself and how I hated myself for allowing that to happen. You know, and that was one of the things that also, like, I hated myself every time I looked in the mirror. Like, you should have known that, child. Like, you should have known that. But the truth is, we're human beings. We exist in a system, in a society that we don't have control over everything. And so I had to give grace and compassion to myself. And I think that was actually one of the biggest lessons that I learned. It's like, no, you deserve grace too.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you weren't in control of everything. You controlled what you could control. And so now it's a different time to control what you control.
That was
Oh, Nathan, yes. You hit a big one there, like offering yourself grace. That was a tough one for me. Sometimes if I am being transparent, I would say
another topic
sometimes,
for us.
yeah.
Offering yourself grace.
Sometimes I am beating myself up still, yet and still, and I'm saying, Tommy, no. That same grace that you offer to everybody else, you definitely deserve that as well. You actually had me think of, oh my, Nathaniel, you were saying so many things that just had me just wanting to go off script and I can't even remember what, oh, here it is. Off script moment. Okay, thank you for this. Thank you. There's a gentleman in the audience named Corey. He is my antagonist.
Hey, Corey.
Okay. Say hi to Corey. But I'm hoping that that each of you and you I feel gave us a prelude to this question, Nathaniel, but you're free to offer more if you like. Will each of you share with the audience a moment or the moment that you felt free, like after diagnosis, and you were like, I am free.
I do remember this moment. So, like I told you, when I was first diagnosed, I promised not to tell anybody. And so the first person that I actually did tell was my sister, and that was because I was going crazy as far as I knew. And me and her used to talk every day, and she's like, something's just not right. And so I was thinking to somebody at the time, she's like, you have to tell your sister. Out of anybody, this is going to help free you. So I told her, and then she's like, okay, we have to tell Dad. And I was like, all right, that's it. Like, that's all the disclosure I need. So if something happens, at least y'all know what was going on. But it really wasn't until I spoke with my grandmother and I disclosed to her that everything else did not matter, because I spoke to her and I said, Grandma, I got to tell you something. And we were on the phone because I was living in DC at the time. She's Dayton, Ohio. And my grandmother, she was retired when I was born. She lived to be 101. So she was like 60 when I was born. Like, so she was always just around. She was my hero. And so, like, my grandmother does not accept this. I don't know what I'm going to do, but, and I don't know what she's going to say. She knew I was gay. She accepted that barely. She was just like, you know, do your thing. But when I told her, the first thing she said, you thought I was going to be worried about that? She said, Magic Johnson is doing just fine. And she's like, you're way smarter than him, so I'm sure you're going to be okay. But that moment, it was so freeing because it was just like, you know, I'm putting myself in a prison that I don't really have to. And the people that have loved me still love me and will continue to love me. And the person who I needed the most affirmation from, I got. So nobody else mattered after that. You know, that one person that I knew I needed in my life to accept me and no matter what, continue to. So the path was all up to me at that point. So yeah, that was my freedom.
That's good.
That was, yes, and deserving of an applause. Anyone else would like to share? Ms. Helen?
I can go. So for me, it was the moment that I was accepted because, you know, people look at you like, treat you as HIV, but not as a whole person. But the minute somebody looked at me like, what else? And I'm like, I just told HIV. And they're like, what else? And then I had to talk about everything else that was going on with me, which was the children, the job, and all those things. And HIV was not even part of it. That time I felt complete because I knew that HIV is not the only thing going on with me, but my whole life. So being treated as a whole person, that's what can be.
Well, mine was, so I went to the doctor, I didn't know what was the, went to the doctor, she called me and said, bring your daughter. When she said bring my daughter, I didn't know what it was. Okay, so my daughter knew. I told her, I told my son. I picked who I told, right? And I told my sister in California. But there's this one person I was scared to tell. It was my nephew. I said, he's not gonna love me anymore. You know, I even went somewhere and left my baby at home and took my nephew. I forgot I had a baby, you know, but he was there. And once I told him, it's just like everything lifted up. He said, I'm gonna love you no matter what. He said, why you feel that way? I said, I didn't know. I think, you know, because we had family members that treated their other family members so bad. I didn't know how he would. I knew my kids was gonna love me unconditionally. Other than that, I didn't care. But when I told him and he told me, that was it. I was free.
I think mine came, I had an ex-boyfriend, and, cause I was free with my friends. I was free with the gay community. It was my mother, my father did not know, and I had been living with HIV for some years, like 7 years, and I had not told my parents. And I think this is the first time I'm telling this story too, because it was so odd. I was such an advocate. I was teaching my friends how to live with HIV, telling them where to go get the medicine, telling them where to go get tested, and I was doing all those things. And the community knew that I was positive, but my parents did not know. So I had an ex-boyfriend, well, he was my boyfriend at the time, and he fell sick, and I was like, "No, boy, they ain't no but little HIV. You'll be all right." Because it was that casual by then, because I knew how to take care of it. I knew that you need to go to the doctor, you needed to get on some medication, and you need to start living your life and stuff. So those the basics of what I knew then. And so, but he was very like, "No, I don't have HIV." I'm like, "Yeah, you do. You know, you do have it, and you do need to go get some care for it." So what happened was, he was in the hospital, and I was just telling him that all of this, he was just such in denial. And he actually thought that I was cheating on him while he was in the hospital. And when the ambulance, before then, when the ambulance came to our house to get him, because he was basically dying in the bed, and I was telling him, I'm just gonna call the ambulance. So I called the ambulance, they took him to the hospital. In his mind, he was thinking that I sent him to the hospital so that I could cheat on him or whatever. So during that time he was in the hospital, I used to go see him a little bit, and I just kind of like, you know, this relationship is not gonna work out. And I had the hardest time because, and I had the worst conscience about this because I broke up with him while he was sick in the hospital, and I felt so horrible about that. So for the longest, well, when he got out, he took vengeance against me, and he was like, I'm gonna tell your mom and your dad that you're positive. So he went and told my parents, like a whole sit down, told my parents that I was positive, and my mother asked me about it, and anybody know my mom? My mom has this Louisiana accent that she's not gotten rid of. So she's like, no, no. Oh, you positive? I was like, yes, mom, I'm positive every day. What are you talking about? So I had to come out and finally tell my parents that I was positive. But instead of being vengeful to my ex-boyfriend, and that freed me, of course. But I didn't leave away from that situation bitter with him. So what happened was I just said that if he ever needs me again, that I was gonna be there for him. Because I left him while because he was annoying, really. You know, whatever condition he was in, I didn't wanna be with him anymore. Because he wasn't like, I manned up to HIV. And I didn't like the fact that he did not man up to it. And I know everybody don't have that strength, and I'm guilty of thinking that everybody should be strong like me. I really am. You know, when I said it's just a little HIV, at that time, those were my thoughts. I did think like, just take the pill and get on the bandwagon of taking care of yourself. And everybody is not that strong. To this day, I grab my face and like, why were those people dying? Like, why were they dying? The medication was right over there at Parkland at the Amelia Court. You just go get them and you do what the doctors say. And people just was not as strong as I was. I'm like, that took me nothing to do. It takes me nothing to get up here and say that I am HIV positive. I have been living with HIV for 34 years. It really takes me nothing, guys. This is basically who I am. This is natural for me to take up for myself, to be myself, to live my life out loud like this, and other people do not have that. And I am guilty of thinking that everybody should be as strong as me. But I said that I was going to help this guy and be there for him if he ever needed me. Well, about 2 years ago, he came down with cancer and he was dying, and I said that, and then like my memory started coming back, like you said you was gonna be there for him. And I got a second chance to be there for him before he passed. And I really thank God for that opportunity because I didn't like how I left him. I had thoughts of me abandoning him. And I think that set me even freer than him telling my parents that I was positive. Because it was like, I felt obligated to him. And I did get that chance to make that up with him, make it up, but that just led me into another realm of being free, that I was there with him when he got cancer. And he passed about last year, a year and a half ago, and I was there for him. I was still pissed that he told my parents that I was positive, though. But it did free me. It let, so it let for me and my parents to have open conversations. And another thing, I know I'm ranting, but I have a brother that came home from prison. My brother was in prison for 28 years, and he looks at my life and he tells me, like, you are so strong. You are so, like, you're just so about yourself and what you do. Like, he was like, you got your little group, like, because I live out loud, I live a open life. And he marvels at this. But I'm like, there's many of us in this room. We live out loud. We live our trans lives. We live our HIV advocate lives. We live our lives. And I think that he didn't understand that. Well, of course, he's been locked up 28 years. But so now I'm teaching him how to grab life by the horns and just live it, And all of the times that we had this awful relationship when we were growing up, it was terrible. It was terrible. Now he's respecting me as a person that's brave, as a person that lives free, because I decided to live free. I live free from the stigmas of HIV. I live free from the stigmas of being a Black gay man. I think it's all empowering. And I don't blame you for saying that HIV was the best thing that happened to you. Because of HIV, I go to the doctor regularly, which I know my ass wouldn't be going to no doctor regularly. Because of HIV, I got a great job. Because of HIV, I go to all kind of classes, I'm in therapy, so it did flip and become more empowering than something that was just terrible for me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So I want to, time check, okay? And so what I would like to do is, well, I didn't share, it's okay.
I want you to share. I'm sorry I took up so much time, but I want you to
No.
share.
Oh, no, all is well. So I do want to get to this question though. I want to ask you all, just thinking about, the, uh, biomedical evolutions that we've had in HIV, where people are getting to live longer, experience more joys, and we're getting well into like our 50s and beyond. If we're thinking about people who were like had experienced like vertical transmission, like mother to child. But oh my God, I was trying to incorporate question 4. Okay. And yes, thank you. And so thinking about like all the systematic changes that have happened like over time, and considering Black Americans, and I actually put this fact in here I wanted to express. Black Americans representing 42% of new HIV diagnoses and only 13% of the US population. One of the thoughts I was having was like what system changes that we wanted to see like in our lifetime, and if we could like collaborate that with this other question was like, so what changes would you like to see in your lifetime, and what's helped you to maintain a level of hope and resilience as someone living with HIV diagnosis?
Changes are rolling out every day. Now we have a new injectable that will prevent you twice a year from contracting and acquiring HIV. I mean, these things are groundbreaking. I mean, even when I was able to go from 3 pills to 1 pill, I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you had 3 different medications, you had 3 different co-pays, it was a lot. And if they don't have it in stock and you would only pick up 2, it was a mess.
Yeah.
But with all of the biomedical advancements, and then also the notion of understanding U equals U and how powerful that is, and that's one thing that I'm a huge advocate for, because that was one thing that allowed me to look in the mirror and say, there he is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're the same person. You're not retroviral. You're not an atomic bomb. All these other things. As long as you take care of yourself, the incentive is you have all this freedom. Freedom of joy, freedom of pleasure, freedom of life, all these other things, and freedom from fear.
Yeah.
Because that was, the unknown is the unknown, and you don't know it. But the more you know, the better you can do. And so with the biomedical advancements of PrEP and the understanding of the science behind U equals U, undetectable is untransmittable, those are things that shift the culture and how we see ourselves, and also how we advocate for ourselves, I think, as well. Because those empowering messages, I think that when I was first diagnosed, I felt like my power was taken away. And throughout a lot of the advancements and the things that have happened with science, it's given me my power back. And it's put it back in my hands. It's like, no, this is definitely in my control now. Yeah. And so that's a game changer, I think, because at one point, you did not have control. It was really up to however best your provider advocated for you and how best you advocated for yourself. But in 2011, I was given a 3-pill-a-day regimen. Like, what? And that's what you started with, when there were other options out there. But I didn't know. And it wasn't until somebody was like, that's a whole list of drugs you could have chosen from, instead of just these 3 pills. And the 3 pills actually had really negative side effects. Like, I was jaundiced, my eyes were yellow all the time. It was making my liver inflate. Like, I was having all types of issues. But as soon as I switched, like, all those issues went away. But it was really about understanding how to advocate and understanding that these things are just out here. And I think the more you're in advocacy, the more you understand, or the closer you have in proximity to things that change, and the closer you are to that information so that you can utilize it.
Absolutely. You're making me think of the fact that often, and even still, individuals don't get to have those in-depth conversations with their medical providers about like how to care for them and what type of medication they want, and that they want a single dose regimen or maybe an injectable. The provider is just like looking at the labs or just following a protocol and just like assigning what's in the protocol. So in that, like, definitely delves into that self-advocacy piece, and like the part that we really have to work on. Even if we're like the biggest advocates pre-HIV diagnosis, like you being an HIV advocate for HIV and a person living with, that is like a different level of advocacy as I've known my time in the land of HIV advocacy. Ms. Donna, I was wondering if you at least also would share with us what helps you maintain a level of hope and resilience as someone living with.
What I want somebody, okay, so research. We as Black women, we need to be able to go out there and do research so they can find something that's for us. Not just say, well, it works on this person, it works, well, what about us?
Black woman.
A Black woman.
Right.
And it's not enough research because there's not enough women that's out there to do it. I did. Parkland, Amelia Court, had a research and I was on it. I just wish more people get out there. And like I say, I'm on one pill a day now. So that's great. I wish I could be on no pills. I know the shots are there, but I'm just saying, I just
We don't
wish,
know pills, right.
I just want to just end this epidemic, period.
Right.
You know, so
I feel you. I feel you.
just more women get out there. Let's do some research so we can end it.
I
We can
love you
stop
for taking
it.
care of, looking out for Black women. That's
Hey, I am. I got to look
Did
out
you have
for
something to add, Ms. Hill?
So I always think about, even though things are changing, stigma is still there. So people still look at you, look at HIV still like it's dirty. They want a person living with HIV to be talking to another person living with HIV, not because they get along, but just because the common thing is HIV. So I just hope that maybe we can still, I know that saying normalize HIV might be the wrong way to say it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Normalize the conversation, because now with U equals U in the PrEP that's there, it should be possible for somebody who is positive to be able to be in a relationship with somebody who is not positive, because the options are there. So to me, I'm just gonna still use the word to say normalize HIV and stop the stigma.
Come on, stop the stigma.
Stop it.
So if we can close with you, each of you share with the audience something that you would share with an individual who has an unknown HIV status. As a person living with, let's just say you are completely disclosed to like everyone knows who you are, but you have the opportunity to talk to someone with an unknown status, and they're reluctant or ambivalent to testing. What are the first few things that you would say?
Start with the facts.
The facts always are.
Start with the facts. The facts are 1 out of 2 men who has sex with men potentially acquire HIV in their lifetime. That is a fact.
Yeah.
And if you want to ignore that from that fact, then that's a whole other conversation. But the next question is going to be, how much do you love yourself? And for some of us, that's a question we never thought about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of us don't love ourselves as much as we think we do. I mean, because sometimes we accept love from partners that is not even a part with how we see ourselves,
Yeah.
And so I think the more I've loved myself, the more I demand it in terms of love from those around me. But that'll be the next question. How much do you love yourself? And if you do love yourself this much, because I love you to a certain level to tell you that these are the things that are out there. You're getting ready to walk out into a fire, baby, and you don't have to.
Yeah.
But you can choose that, but there's another option as well. And that other option is caring for yourself enough to go get tested and to figure out if you are positive, okay, let's get you on treatment. And if you're negative, let's get you on PrEP, or some type of regimen so that you can make sure that you stay negative.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's how we're going to end the epidemic. If everybody who's living with HIV is on treatment and stays on treatment, it's undetectable status. Not everybody's going to reach an undetectable level as well. Let me also save space for those that don't have that capacity, because they still exist, they still matter. But if these should be your goals. Your goal should be to reach undetectable status. And if that's the case, and everybody else who is negative got on PrEP, we could end this just like within 90 days.
Yeah. I like the topic, 90 days.
90 days.
Yes, Ms. Helen, if you would share.
Yeah, so I'll just tell them, just like everybody else says, to say HIV is not a death sentence because you can stay healthy as long as you take care of yourself. I'll tell them that it's better to know what's going on with you than not to know. Because if you do know what's going on with you, there's help out there.
Yes, Ms. Donna. What would you say to that ambivalent person?
Then it's okay.
Ooh.
It is okay to go get tested. It is okay. Somebody's gonna live. It's okay. I'll be here for you. It's okay.
It's the simple things.
That's my next form. It's okay.
Yeah.
That was so beautiful. It's okay, somebody will love you. Put on a t-shirt.
Right.
Yes. I am just, get tested. Get on prayer with those things. That's what we got, that's what we gotta do. That's what we have, Use the tools that's good, use the tools that are out there. And that's get treated, if you need to be treated, and get prepped up, Those are, we can end this thing. We can end the epidemic, we really can.
Because knowledge is not just about power, it's about freedom too.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Oh, my brain is like circulating. But you all have had the opportunity to sit here and take on all of this information. I hope that you've learned something here. I have typed up the closing script because I have a script here. So yeah, thank you to our panelists for your truth and strength and brilliance. Oh my goodness. Your lived experience and are vital not only to honoring the history of the HIV movement, but shaping its future. So let this conversation remind us that meaningful involvement isn't just a principle, it's a call to action. So let's keep building systems that center long-term survivors and survivorship, which includes people living with and those living without, like our providers. Long-term survivorship is extended beyond people living with HIV. That is my thought there. What were you about to say, Nate? Okay.
I would say thank you for having me.
Yes, thank y'all so much for taking your time.
Thank y'all for listening.
Yes, and don't forget to tune into the A podcast. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Oh.